I'll wait till the fight is officially announced so you can spill all details. When, where, part of the 5v5?
So it's in Saudi. So it's going to be the first women's world title fight to ever take place in Saudi Arabia. So I feel very, very excited about that. History making, tick. October 12th. So we're about 8 weeks out, less than 8 weeks now. Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like it's such a great clash of styles. I feel like it's a fight that people definitely see as a 50-50 fight and not just on paper like it has been in the past. Like, actually a 50-50 fight. So I respectfully and personally don't think it's a 50-50 fight. I'll have to see on October 12th, but I'm really excited.
Evolve Turbiev undercard. That's mega.
Huge. I know. I'm so excited. I actually couldn't believe it. So no, I'm really, really excited. I think this is probably the most excited I've been for a fight. The card it's on in Riyadh season. In Riyadh, I think it's going to be, a very, very special night.
Sky's enthusiasm is infectious. I mean, I'm really beginning to like this fighter. It's infectious because here you have a fight that, at least on paper, is a 50-50 fight against a talented, young, unbeaten fighter like herself. And Sky isn't worried about it. She's excited. She's all smiles.
It's almost unsettling.
I've always thought that, stylistically, Raven Chapman has the right base style to give Sky Nicolson a lot of problems, though you'd never know it to see Sky talk about the fight, talk about Raven, talk about herself. She's very confident.
Sky is a southpaw, where Raven is an orthodox fighter. Sky is 29, where Raven is 30.
Sparring.
Who should Sky Nicolson spar to prepare for Raven? Who should Raven spar to prepare for Sky?
Provided that camp isn't in full swing and hasn't started already. In all likelihood, it's about to, for a fight set to go down in October. Raven should probably enlist the aid of former IBF featherweight champion Sarah Mahfoud
of Denmark.
Some of the same characteristics as Sky Nicolson. Long, limber, wiry, and on the move. A fighter that fights on their toes, whose best punches are their straight punches.
Not necessarily on the same level as Sky Nicolson.
Sky fought Sarah Mahfoud and Sky beat Sarah Mahfoud, and there are some slight differences. Sky is a southpaw, whereas Sarah is an orthodox fighter, but in terms of implementation and base style, they actually are very similar. Sarah likes to stay on her toes, move around, stay behind her straight punches, not big on combination punching,
not big on power,
big on defense and movement, the same as Sky Nicolson. The only caveat is Sarah does have a fight coming up, so I'm not sure if she would be available for Raven to use her as a sparring partner. Another name Raven might want to look up is Taylor Robertson. Taylor, when she wants to, bears a lot of similarities to Sky. She can fight on the move, fight on the go, fight from the outside, stay behind the straight punches. She's a defensively minded fighter. I think the only caveat with Taylor is that she may not be comfortable working against her fellow Aussie, her countrywoman. Taylor and Sky, they're both from Australia, so that's a caveat right there.
Catch-22.
Argentina's former champion, Deborah Ana E. Lopez, wouldn't be a bad shout. Deborah is a pure boxer, just like Sky is a pure boxer, outside fighter, mover. Once again, not big on power, but very big on defense and movement. That wouldn't be a bad shout.
I don't think she's busy with anything.
The Dominican Republic's Vivian Rodriguez. That wouldn't be a bad shout either. She's long and limber for the weight, athletic, just like Sky is athletic, likes to move, likes to stay behind the straight punches, sometimes step into them. She does show a bit more aggression than Sky does, but she can mimic Sky's style. That would make for good sparring.
Good preparation.
Now, who Sky should spar to prepare for Raven? I'm thinking former IBF champion of Argentina, Jorgelina Guanini. Just so happens to have fought Raven Chapman before. She lost. Jorgelina, much like Raven, is a combination puncher, busy within a round, very aggressive, very persistent, shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter with a lower center of gravity that likes to crowd their opponents.
There is also Lila Furtado of Brazil. Lila, she actually fought Raven before, and like Raven, she's very aggressive, very persistent, likes to throw punches in bunches. This is what you have to mimic, what you have to prepare for.
Now, I don't think that Lila is as fundamentally sound and well-schooled as Raven Chapman. She's not as versatile, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a carbon copy of almost any fighter that is a good fighter. What Lila does bring to the table is the persistence you see in Raven Chapman, the aggression and the power.
The combination punching.
What she brings to the table, what she can mimic. Unbeaten up-and-comer Ebony Jones might not be a bad shout. Fights out of a very wide stance. She's a mid-range to inside combination puncher. Not necessarily the spitting image of Raven Chapman, but some similarities, level changes.
Aggression, activity, just like Raven.
Just some ideas for sparring partners. Just some suggestions, though for all I know, both fighters probably have their sparring partners already lined up. I'm just trying to figure out who they might use to prepare for each other.
Because we know what they have to prepare for. Raven has to prepare for an outside fighter and a mover, and Sky has to prepare for an aggressive inside fighter.
Very intriguing. We'll talk more about the fight in another video. In men's super middleweight news, Canelo Alvarez has blasted David Benavidez's light heavyweight debut win versus Alexander Vajdik. I think that's his weight class, 175. And you can see he's very different. He can't do nothing with a fighter who retired in 2019. It's different when you're in your own weight class and fighting with guys in your own weight.
I agree.
Fueling the ongoing debate as to whether or not David Benavidez is a weight bully, and some other fighters, what is weight bullying? These fighters that walk around pretty heavy and pretty far from their divisions where they actually campaign. How much weight do they have to shed to get there, and how much more weight do they put on after they rehydrate? To some people, depending on what the number is, that constitutes weight bullying. A fighter who wants a physical advantage.
So David, in between fights, it looks like this guy walks around at maybe 200 or 200 and change.
If we just round down and call it an even 200, you're talking about a fighter that has to shed 38 pounds to get to super middleweight.
That's a lot.
So that once he gets there, once he gets down to 168, the night of the fight, once he rehydrates, this guy might be putting on in excess of 20, 25, 30, maybe more pounds.
That's what weight bullying is supposed to be, that you got these very big guys, heavy guys, boiling down to smaller weights to have a physical advantage over the other guys in the division. Now, whether or not you think there's something unethical about that, I'll leave such judgments up to you, but that is what Canelo is talking about.
And how David Benavidez didn't look like a monster, a Mexican monster, or a monster of any kind at light heavyweight, how he has been looking at super middle, because at light heavyweight, there are guys with his same physical dimensions, same height, same length, maybe more, that rehydrate to whatever he rehydrates to. And this is the first time he's moved up in weight, and he can't stay in character. Canelo noticed.
I did too.
That at 175 against the guy his own size, similar physical dimensions if not more generous, he doesn't look like a monster. His punches don't have as much on them. His combinations are not as damaging. That he's not so much an elite fighter, he was just bigger than everybody else at 168, but when you move him up to 175,
he's bang average.
He looked ordinary. There's been a lot of talk of wear and tear after that Vajdik fight that we will further discuss in another video.
He got banged up.
In a fight that he won, just imagine if it were a fight that he lost. So when a fighter continually moves up in weight, it's not uncommon that they might start to look human the higher up they go, like say Canelo Alvarez at his fourth weight with Dimitri Bivol, Terence Crawford at his fourth weight with Israel Madrimov,
Chocolatito at his fourth weight with Sorun Visai,
or Jorge Linares years ago at his fourth weight with Pablo Cano. It's not uncommon that as a fighter continues to move up, they might start to look human. But those guys were in their fourth weight class, you understand that? Their fourth division.
This is only David's second. This is only the first time the guy's moving up, and already he's starting to unravel.
Because of what I told you. The guy's not that good. He's not fundamentally sound. As far as pressure fighters go, there are better, more nuanced pressure fighters, like say Artur Beterbiev, than David Benavidez. That all he really is a big guy with a decent engine who throws a lot of punches. But if he goes up to light heavyweight where he's not so big, David Benavidez, at least at 168, has shown a good engine, good cardio, good energy reserves. But up there at 175 against Vajdik, in the second half of the fight, he gassed out. And you could see he gassed out.
His output dissipated.
Second half of the fight, whatever punches do get in, they're not having any effect on Vajdik. And he's not throwing that many of them, nowhere near as many as he was throwing at the start. His energy reserves were starting to wear, starting to wane.
Power was non-existent.
So when so much of what makes you formidable is all based on what you weigh the night of a fight, are you really a good fighter, or are you just a weight bully? Because it's not his footwork. David Benavidez doesn't have good footwork.
It's not his ring savvy or ring IQ. He just throws a bunch of punches.
It's not defense. He's no defensive wizard. He's a flat-footed plotter who comes forward throwing punches in bunches. There's not a lot to him. It's just not as effective at 175 as it has been at 168. So what does that make him?
What does that say about him?
To Canelo and a lot of other people, all it really says is that he's a weight bully. That when so much of who you are as a fighter is dependent on how much you weigh, how much more you weigh than another guy, you're not really elite.
I don't think he is.
Though Canelo Alvarez being the one saying this now will give rise to more demands that he face him. That if you think he's easy work, then go in there and show us. And I admit, I want to see that fight too. I would certainly have preferred to see that fight than an Edgar Berlanga fight.
Aren't they saying David's all banged up though? Isn't he injured?
Well, that's what the reports are saying, but don't let hierarchy of thought, cognitive function, and logic get in the way of a good narrative.
The narrative that Canelo's so scared of Big Bad David.
Personally, I don't think he's scared of David.
I just think he doesn't want to give him the satisfaction because David has been disrespectful throughout.
Parasitic. You just want Canelo to finance your retirement fund, and for that, he doesn't want to give you the satisfaction.
Whether or not you agree with that rationale, I'll leave such judgments up to you. The WBN recently published an article detailing the inner workings of the PBC right now.
And what some of their fighters have going on. Samson Lukowicz, the longtime quote-unquote promoter of David Benavidez, told WBN earlier this month, pending recovery from injuries, Benavidez will fight in December. Lukowicz stressed to us, if Benavidez has not fully recovered from broken ribs, a cut on his eyes, and hand injuries incurred in the Vajdik win, then his return will be postponed until 2025. And this isn't a fight that he won. Just imagine if it were a fight that he lost. Though I don't know that we can take Samson at his word, because remember what happened with Fundora? Sebastian Fundora, another one of Samson Lukowicz's fighters. After the Zoo fight, they said that the injuries he sustained in that fight would bench him until the fall or winter months, that he wouldn't be cleared to spar until late September. Just for Sebastian himself to come out and say he would have been medically cleared much sooner than that, in June.
That's what he told Cynthia Conte.
We talked about it here on the channel. So was it that Samson Lukowicz exaggerated the severity of Sebastian's injuries after the Zoo fight? And is he now doing that with David Benavidez? Is he exaggerating about David Benavidez's injuries after the Vajdik fight? Broken ribs, busted hands, a cut on his eye?
Why would he lie?
They're not going to say it, but there are budget constraints over there. There are budget constraints and a scarcity of fight dates for the fighters at the PBC. That's why they're still shopping around for another broadcast partner. They want a linear TV deal like the one they had with Showtime, the ones they had with Fox.
Why would he lie?
They already have a preliminary schematic about what fights they want to do in what remains of this year. And getting David out there, they may not have the resources to get him out there one more time. It may be more trouble than it's worth. But if you tell the media and you tell everybody while he's injured,
there's your excuse.
You can take what Samson said at face value, or you cannot take it at face value. If you take it at face value, this guy suffered broken ribs, busted hands, and a cut-up face with a 37-year-old Alexander Vajdik. Goes to what Canelo Alvarez is saying, what I've been saying, that this guy's no monster. Not at 175, and not against guys his own size. That's if you take what Samson said at face value.
If you don't,
and you think he's lying, you think he's saying this stuff for some other reason. The reason could be they don't got the fight dates for David. They just don't have enough resources to get him back out there one more time. And trying to find someone for him to fight, somebody safe, because they're not going to roll the dice.
They ain't gonna gamble.
Samson Lukowicz is often mentioned as David Benavidez's promoter, but when you think about their relationship and how it works, he's more David's manager than his promoter. Samson doesn't have a broadcast deal with a broadcaster.
Samson doesn't promote his own shows.
The shows his fighters fight on are Al Heyman's shows, PBC's shows. So when you think about that dichotomy, that would make Al Heyman the promoter and Samson Lukowicz the manager. That's what he acts as. He acts like a manager.
But they call him a promoter.
Why do they call him a promoter?
They call Samson the promoter so that they don't call Al Heyman the promoter.
And the reason they don't want to call Al Heyman the promoter, even though that's what he very much is because that would find him in violation of the Muhammad Ali Act. You can't act as both a manager, a promoter, and an advisor all in one to a fighter, as that constitutes a conflict of interest. That when you're acting, are you really acting in the fighter's best interests or your own? As sometimes those are not the same thing, depending on what hat you're wearing, your managerial hat or your promoter hat.
So you're a consultant, an advisor, providing advice to these fighters. Is the advice you're giving in their best interests or yours? Because you also happen to act as their promoter.
My previous video, we talked about the resurgence of Al Heyman after a lengthy hiatus from the sport. He was said to have stepped away due to a family emergency, but now he's back. And now that he's back,
Pay attention.
I don't know how many, if any, of his fighters we're going to see on these Riyadh season shows, these Riyadh season cards moving forward, because he's going to want to use them for his own shows. Oh, I know that a good number of PBC fighters fought on the undercard of Crawford versus Madrimov.
Though now he's back.
So how this pertains to David Benavidez is, they've attached his name to a potential fight with the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol. You guys know I've never felt that David was committed to that fight, that Samson.
I don't think Al Heyman's gonna let him do it.
I don't. Outsource one of the few familiar faces, one of the few familiar fighters he has left in his thinning stable to go fight on somebody else's show, somebody else's card, now that Al is back.
I already didn't think it was gonna happen, now least of all.
He'll use him for something else. I don't know what. Maybe try to make that Canelo fight happen. There's still hope. Though it would require David to go back down to 168, and you guys know how I feel about that.
It's not a good idea.
But David never wanted that fight, and Samson never wanted that fight because they felt they could win. That's not why they wanted it. They just want the money. It's not even about winning.
Or belts, or undisputed, or legacy, or any of those things.
That if they even wanted the fight, which sometimes I wrestle with, whether or not they really wanted it, it wasn't for any of that stuff. It's not because they think they'll win. They just want to get paid.
Canelo is still working with Al.
Even though it's Matchroom providing the opponent, Canelo is still working with Al, and because he still is, and because David, I don't think he's going to fight the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol, the door is still open.
I think the door is still open for Canelo versus Benavidez.
I think that could still happen on Cinco de Mayo of the following year.